They shoved my son to the ground like he was nothing. I watched from just 10 feet away, handcuffed, blood in my mouth, my uniform torn and hidden under a civilian jacket. He cried out, not because of the pain, but because he didn't understand why men with rifles were screaming at his father. He was only 8. I stayed silent. I had to. If I moved wrong, if I shouted, if I told them who I was, things could get worse. The SWAT team had stormed a building on a bad tip. Wrong address, wrong people. But they didn't know that the man lying cuffed on the floor was once a decorated Special Forces captain, that the same man had led rescues in Afghanistan, extracted hostages under fire, and earned 3 medals for battlefield courage. But that didn't matter now. I was just a man, on the floor, watching his son be hurt. And when the SWAT commander finally walked in, something changed. He paused, stared. His eyes widened. He knew who I was. And what happened next reminded every single officer in that room what honor, sacrifice, and real heroism looked like. It was supposed to be a quiet Sunday. My son Lucas and I were walking back from the park. He had his toy helicopter in one hand and a bag of popcorn in the other. I had a backpack slung over my shoulder, nothing but juice boxes, water, and an old photo of his mother tucked in the side pocket. A woman he never got to meet. A fellow soldier buried with honor. We lived in a modest apartment on the corner of Ridgeway and Polk. I chose it for the peace, the schools, and how close it was to the local VA hospital. Lucas and I had a simple routine. Wake up, breakfast, homework, playtime, night stories, mostly about real war heroes I had served with. He loved hearing about the unsung heroes, the ones history forgot, but I never would. That morning, I'd been fixing a shelf when the door burst open. Don't knock. No warning, just the thunder of boots, a shatter of glass, and laser dots cutting through dust. Get on the ground. Now, Lucas screamed. I grabbed him instinctively, trying to shield his small frame. But before I could explain, before I could even say you've got the wrong place, they had me face down on the hardwood, a knee on my back. Cold cuffs clamped tight. I didn't resist. Not because I couldn't. I've disarmed trained men in tighter spots, but I didn't want them to panic. I saw the fear in their eyes. These weren't bad men, just jumpy, under pressure, and dangerously misinformed. Lucas was crying. One officer tried pulling him away. He resisted. Another officer yanked his arm harder. He fell hard, and hit his cheek against the edge of our coffee table. That was the moment I felt it. The heat, the rage, the battlefield instinct I'd buried deep for years. I almost shouted, almost fought, but I stayed still. Because if I made one wrong move, my son could end up with more than a bruised cheek. Please, I said through clenched teeth. He's just a kid. No response. Just radios crackling, boots scraping, and a rifle still pointed at my head. Tore through the apartment like it was enemy territory. Closets, drawers, even the toilet tank. One officer ripped open my military Inside were medals, letters, and folded flags, all tossed aside like trash. That was the moment I realized this wasn't just a mistake. It was a complete breakdown of trust, training, and awareness. One officer picked up an old photo, me and my squad, standing beside a battered Humvee in the Korangal Valley. Dust on our faces, blood on our sleeves, victory in our silence. He glanced at it, then tossed it to the floor. They still didn't know who I was, and part of me wanted to scream. Do you even know what that photo means? Do you know what it cost? But I said nothing, because this wasn't about pride. It was about my son, keeping him safe, keeping him alive. Then, about 15 minutes in, the door creaked again. A new voice entered the room, calmer, older, sharper. Status, he asked. Secured, male adult, minor child. Nothing suspicious yet. Still clearing. The man stepped inside slowly. Dark uniform, silver trim, a commander. And the moment he laid eyes on me, cuffed, bruised, barely breathing, something shifted. He froze. His head tilted slightly, his brows furrowed, and then his eyes widened. Wait a second. He knelt beside me, looked at my face carefully. Then at the name patch sewn onto the half-torn military bag on the floor. Captain Ryan Walker, he whispered. 2nd Battalion, 3rd Special Forces Group. One of the officers nearby stiffened. Sir, do you know this man? The commander turned slowly, stood up, and said something I'll never forget. This man saved my brother's life. In Kandahar, this man is a hero. The entire room went silent. Every rifle lowered. Every boot froze in place. And in that moment, the story, and the respect, began to change. The handcuffs didn't come off right away. The SWAT commander just stood there, eyes still fixed on me. There was something painful behind his gaze. Regret, shock, and an overwhelming sense of guilt. His team, still gripping their weapons, looked around like they were finally seeing the room for what it was. Not a threat zone, but a home. A veteran's home. A child's safe space. Until they shattered it. Lucas was still on the floor, holding his cheek. He looked at the commander, confused and scared. Then at me. I gave him a small nod, just to let him know it was going to be okay. Get those cuffs off him. Now, the commander said, his voice low but firm. The officers hesitated for a second, not out of defiance, but shame. One knelt beside me and began unlocking the metal restraints, his hands trembling. Sir, I didn't know, he began. You weren't supposed to, I cut in. My voice wasn't angry, just tired. You were doing your job. You just didn't know how much this job costs, some of us. I stood slowly, rubbing the red lines the cuffs had etched into my wrists. My back hurt. My pride hurt more. But I wasn't going to yell. That's not what real war heroes do. The commander knelt beside Lucas. Hey buddy, he said softly. You okay? Lucas nodded, though his eyes were still full of tears. The commander looked back at his team, and for the first time, I saw soldiers in their eyes. Not just law enforcement. They looked like men who had been humbled. And in that silence, I knew something had shifted. The commander walked over to my military trunk, gently lifting the medals that had been thrown aside. His hand stopped on one in particular, a bronze star with a V device for valor. You earned this in 2011. The Takagar Ridge, right? He asked. I nodded. Lost 3 good men that night. Pulled 6 others out under fire. He placed the medal back carefully. You should have had security, not rifles pointed at you. I didn't respond. What could I say? I wasn't there for apologies. I was there for my son. But what struck me wasn't the mistake. It was what came next. The commander ordered his team to stand down and clear the room completely. No more damage. Nothing touched, he said. He turned back to me. Sir, I know this doesn't fix anything, but I'd like to make something right. I don't need anything made right, I replied. Just need to make sure my son never sees something like this again. That's when he asked the question I didn't expect. Why didn't you say who you were? I looked at him, hard, because my name shouldn't matter. I shouldn't need medals or rank for my child to be treated like a human being. He didn't argue, he just nodded slowly. That silence between us was the kind you only feel after combat, when words feel smaller than what's happened. He sat down on the couch that moments ago had been flipped over. My brother, he always talked about you. Said you carried him out with shrapnel in your leg. Said you didn't sleep for 3 nights just to guard them until airlift. I sat across from him. I remember your brother, I said. Good man. Quiet courage. Like most forgotten heroes. He looked down. Your file came across my desk once, he admitted. Retired quietly. No ceremony. No parade. Just gone. I smiled. Parades are for people who need them. I just needed peace. For the first time that day, I saw it hit him. Not just what they'd done, but what it meant. They hadn't just broken down a door. They'd broken the illusion that heroes wear signs on their backs. He looked over at Lucas again. We'll get him checked out. Hospital. Counseling. Whatever you need. I'll make sure this goes as far up the chain as it needs to. I nodded. Appreciate it. But make sure your team understands who they walk into next time. It could be another veteran. Could be a widow. Could be someone with less patience than I had today. He swallowed hard. Then stood. Turned to his team, and gave a command I never thought I'd hear in my living room. Salute. And they did. Every one of them. Even the youngest, who still looked like he hadn't graduated a year ago. They saluted me not because of rank, not because of fear, but because they finally understood. This was more than a mistake. It was a moment of reckoning. And in that moment, every soul in that room remembered what sacrifice really looks like. The hospital was quiet when we arrived. Lucas sat beside me in the back of the unmarked vehicle the SWAT commander had insisted we take. He didn't say much, just held my hand tight and kept his other pressed against his cheek, where the bruise was already turning purple. I could tell his silence wasn't just fear anymore. It was confusion, the kind only a child feels when their safe world suddenly cracks. The ER nurse smiled gently when she saw us, but that smile faltered slightly when she saw the commander walk in behind us. He gave a short explanation, just enough to Lucas through without red tape. As the doctor examined my boy, I sat outside the curtain and closed my eyes. And for the first time in years, I went back. Back to the heat of the Afghan mountains. Back to the mission that changed my life and the way I saw the world. It was 2011. Takur Gar Ridge, one of the worst hellfires I'd ever seen. We were pinned, outnumbered. A communications tower had been compromised, and intel said 2 Americans were still alive inside, captured. My orders were simple: extract them, or don't come back. I remember crawling through shale, the rock slicing my forearms. Gunfire echoed like thunder. I had a shrapnel wound in my thigh, and still I pushed forward. Why? Because the man inside that tower, the one bleeding, praying for rescue, was the SWAT commander's younger brother, Private First Class Jeremy Holt. He'd taken 3 bullets and refused evac until his partner was found. I carried both of them out that night, fire at our backs, smoke in our lungs, God on our side. 6 weeks in recovery, 4 comrades lost, a folded flag for each family, 1 bronze star they pinned on me quietly, without ceremony. And when I got back, no interviews, no cameras, just silence. Because real war heroes don't seek attention. They live with what they saw, and what they did. Back in the hospital hallway, I felt a soft hand on my knee. It was Lucas. He had tears in his eyes, but tried to smile. Dad, did I do okay? I pulled him into my arms. You did. Perfect, son. You were braver than I've ever been. He hugged me tight. Didn't let go. Across the room the commander watched, quiet, somber. He had called his brother Jeremy, now a retired sergeant, living in North Dakota. They spoke briefly, and I heard one line from the phone. Tell him I never forgot. Tell him I still owe him my life. When he hung up, the commander sat beside me. Do you know what Jeremy did after the army? He asked. I shook my head. He became a said he wanted to protect kids in a different way. Always carried that photo of you and him. Said if his students ever asked about bravery, he'd point to that. I felt something tighten in my chest. Not pride, gratitude. Because sometimes we wonder if what we did mattered. If the sacrifices, the pain, the silence, if it all still echoes somewhere in that moment. I knew it did. And then the commander asked another question. One I didn't expect. Would you speak to my team? Share your story. We've got rookies coming in every month who think kicking indoors makes them heroes. They need to hear what a real hero looks like. I didn't answer right away. I looked down at Lucas. Then back up at the man who once held a gun on me, but now held respect in his eyes. Yes, I said, but only if they're ready to hear the truth. He nodded. They are. A week later, I stood in front of the same SWAT team that had raided my home. This time, they were seated in a training hall. No rifles, no vests, just ears open and hearts humbled. I told them the story. From that dusty ridge in Afghanistan to the tear-stained carpet in my living room. I spoke of my bros in arms, the ones who never came back. The ones who died quietly, with courage that would never be documented. I told them about my wife, a medic who saved lives until a roadside bomb took hers. How her last words were a whisper of our unborn son's name. And I told them what real courage is. It's not pulling a trigger, I said. It's pulling a wounded man to safety when your legs are shaking and your soul wants to quit. It's keeping your child calm when you're bleeding inside. It's silence in the face of rage. They listened, and when I finished, they didn't just clap. They stood. Every single one of them. Because honor doesn't come from rank, it comes from sacrifice. It was a quiet afternoon. 3 weeks after the raid, Lucas was back to laughing again. His bruises had healed, but the questions lingered. Why did they hurt us, Dad? He asked one night, as I tucked him into bed. I looked into his eyes, so wide, so innocent, yet already touched by the harsh world. I didn't lie to him, because sometimes people don't look close enough. They see what they fear, not what's really there. He nodded. And then, almost in a whisper, he asked, Are you still a soldier? That one stopped me. I'd worn the uniform. I'd led teams into fire. I'd buried brothers and held shattered bodies until the last breath. But was I still a soldier now? I took his hand. Yes, son. Being a soldier doesn't stop when the war ends. It just changes. 2 days later, the city council called me in. Word of the incident had gotten out, not in some viral outrage, but through the quiet channels of those who cared. Veterans in the community stood up. Former Marines, airmen, even a retired Navy admiral showed up at the hearing with a cane and a file of every operation I had ever led. They didn't come to fight. They came to remind the city what real war heroes looked like, and how easily they're forgotten. The mayor stood as I entered. He offered no grand speech, just handed me a certificate of recognition and said, "For your service, for your silence, and for reminding us what honor truly means." I thanked him. But what mattered more was what came after. The SWAT team had started a new initiative, Operation Second Watch, a program led by veterans, aimed at retraining officers on empathy, trauma, and veteran identification in high-risk situations. They asked me to be part of it. At first, I hesitated, not out of bitterness, but because part of me wanted to close that chapter for good, to return to quiet mornings, simple walks to the park, popcorn bags, and toy helicopters. But Lucas, he changed my mind. He came into my study one night, holding the same photo they had thrown to the floor, me and my brothers in the valley of death, standing in silence. "I want to show this at school," he said. "I want them to know my dad's a hero." My throat tightened, not because of pride, because he understood something most adults still didn't. That heroism isn't just what happens on the battlefield. It's what you carry long after the war ends. So I joined. I stood in front of new recruits every month, told them the truth, showed them the scars, talked about the cost of assumptions, the weight of memory, and the quiet strength of dignity. Lucas even came to one session, sat in the back with his arms crossed, smiling. The commander gave him a junior badge that day, called him the bravest recruit in the room. He beamed. And for the first time in a long time, so did I. Years later, on Veterans Day, they unveiled a small plaque outside the training center. It didn't have my name. It didn't mention the incident. It just said, "For the unseen battles, the unheard courage, and the unbroken spirit of those who keep serving, even when the world stops noticing." People walk past it every day. Some stop, some don't. But one day, Lucas pointed to it and whispered, "That's for you, isn't it?" I didn't answer. I just squeezed his hand and looked up at the flag. Because in the end, this story wasn't just about me. It was about all of us. The forgotten heroes, the unsung warriors, the ones who carried their battlefield courage into the quiet moments no one else sees. It was about the father who didn't fight back, even when he could, the child who stood brave through confusion, and the commander who remembered just in time. If this story moved you, share it to honor the real heroes, the ones who keep serving, even when no one is watching.